12.2 is all about histograms. Before I can teach you about histograms, which is the newer type of graph, I do want to introduce two other types that should be very familiar. So make sure you have that yellow sheet we were working on in 12.1. We're going to open up three other doors. Two older graphs that you have heard before, and then one newer one, which is the histogram, which is our focus for the next day. First one, just a simple bar graph. Here's one example when you have dollars being spent over time. Notice the labels are year and dollars. We have equal spacing, and there's a gap between these bars. Definitely something you've seen before, bar graph. Another example of a bar graph that maybe you haven't seen as much is called a side-by-side bar graph. This is an example, very interesting example with the topic, scores on a fractions test with preparation and without preparation. So down here we have each student, and each student took two fraction tests. The orange ones is his score without studying, and the green one is taller all the way across because after they studied they did better. So you can see each person down here and their score over here. Again though, this is one person and then there's a gap. That's important. Another one that's slightly different is the stacked bar graph. Again, you have the topics down here, and then the two different things that they're graphing are girls and boys. The difference with this one is that if you just want to figure out how many boys play basketball, you do have to take the difference between about 39 and about 18. So you would have to subtract to find out how many boys play basketball. So this is a little bit different in that they're not side by side. One is on top of the other. They're stacked, and there still is this gap in between each kind of sport. And again, over here, there's the students that actually had that as their favorite sport. So in your notes now, I want you to open up that bar graph section, and we're just going to write a couple of words. A bar graph is a graph with a vertical or horizontal bar. So we'll fill that in. None of the examples that I gave you had horizontal bars, but that does occur as well, and it's still a bar graph. So basically on bar graphs, this is already filled in. You can graph different types of things, and the big idea is that the bars do not touch. That's going to be important as we move on to histograms. Underneath your definition of a bar graph is the start of an example. What you have are class pets. So this is what your graph looks like. We're going to actually fill this in for a bar graph example. So we have number of students and we have class pets. You can pick the pets that you want. No, you can't. So the cats column, right above cats, you're going to have a scale here. I'm just going to do by 5s to make it simple. And maybe 5 students in the class have cats. Then we can survey the class, and maybe 10 of us have dogs. And then the other category, be fish, birds, and maybe we have another 7 or so have something else. Very simple example of a bar graph. Moving on. These we've been doing for a while in previous grades, tally charts. Tally chart, very simply put, it's a way to keep track of the frequency of something occurring. So if a lot of students have a birthday in January, then we would just keep track with a tally system. Again, 4 tally marks, and then the 5th one crosses them. You've seen this before. These are just keeping track of how many students are born in each month, as you see here. This one, sorry, it's a little fuzzy. Favorite food. You vote for your favorite food. We do this pretty much every morning for lunch count. So basic tally chart. So it is a method, this is for your notes, open up that door. It is a method of counting the frequency, how often something occurs. And why I'm doing this one, I know it's on the second section of your yellow notes. This you need in order to talk about histograms. So method of counting frequency is a tally chart. So here on the bottom of your yellow is the sketch of the beginning of a tally chart. Notice you have the activities on the left and a space to tally how many times people voted or wanted that activity to do after school. So we don't have a class right now, so we're just going to pretend we surveyed the class and 5 people wanted to play football after school, 6 people wanted to bike, 2 people wanted to skateboard, and then the rest of the class wanted to do something else, either play video games, dance, that kind of thing. So make sure that there's enough space in between your groups of tallies. That's the only caution when you're making a tally chart, so that you can actually count accurately. Now for the main focus. A histogram is a type of bar graph, but it's special because you don't see any of these gaps in between these bars. And what a histogram does is that it takes, if you notice the difference, this is not by subject. This is talking about the number of children who visited a zoo, and they have age groups. So they have a range of 6 to 7-year-olds, 7 to 8-year-olds, 8 to 9-year-olds, and 9 to 10-year-olds. And so what they have done is they've kept track, okay, how many kids walked into this zoo, and they kept a tally chart. And with that tally chart, they were able to say the 6 to 7-year-olds were, 75 of them walked into that zoo. So this was the frequency of how many students actually went and visited. And you can see the difference, again, no gaps here, and there's a range down here as far as the scale of the topic of this bottom part of the graph. Here's another one that makes a little bit more sense. This is just a number of employees and their salaries. Pretend it's like a company like Coca-Cola or something. So here are the salary ranges, and you can definitely see from 0 to 10,000. Notice the unit. It's always important to pay attention to that. 0 to 10,000, and then it's 11 to 21,000. So this scale is important to pay attention to. You're going to actually have to come up with this scale when you're making your own histograms. So that's why I'm paying close attention to it now. So what they did to get this is they made a frequency table. They made a tally chart, and they looked at all the employees and said, okay, where do you fall? Do you fall in this range? Okay, you get 1 tally mark. Do you fall in this range? Okay, 1 tally mark. And then they added up all those tally marks to get the height of these bars. So if they had 300 tally marks in this category, that's why this bar is as high as it is. And so you can see again, there are no gaps in between these bars, and you have a range down here for your scale. So let's turn to your notes. For a histogram, it is a bar graph, a certain type of bar graph with a scale that has equal intervals. That's that range that I was talking about. Those ranges are all equal intervals. It shows the frequency distribution. It shows that tally chart, and it shows how it is distributed over that whole range of intervals. And the important thing is that the bars do touch each other. Okay, so here we have what you see on the bottom of your yellow sheet. This is the beginning of a histogram. I purposefully left this range blank and this scale as well blank, but the labels are here and the topic is here for us. So pretend your parents asked you to actually go out and fundraise for your end of the year party. That has happened in the past. You guys are doing donations. So if you haven't donated, go ahead and send that in. The 6th grade fundraiser sales will range. You could sell nothing. You could sell hundreds of dollars of candy bars. And so we're going to track the students and the number of students and see how many people fell in different categories. So we have to establish the range. We have to establish the intervals down here. So let's do the first one. There's 4 different spaces, so we're going to have an interval of 100 for each section. So we're going to start out from 0 to 99. So you can have a score, an amount of 0 and then up to 99, which is technically 100 different possibilities. And now notice I've written this in the space. That's important because this space is where we're actually going to make our bar graph. And now the second interval is going to be 100 to 199. And then we're going to have 200 to 299. And then 300 to 399. So these are the possibilities of falling in different categories. Are you going to sell a little bit and be in this category? Or are you going to go crazy and sell close to $400 worth of candy bars? Go for it, but your parents will be happy. Now we're going to just have a basic scale over here, 5, 10, 15, 20, just to chart the number of students. So this is not a range. Notice my numbers are actually lining up with this hash mark, whereas the range numbers are in the spaces. That's important. So now we would pretend again, and we're going to say, okay, how much did you sell? How much did you sell? And we're going to make a tally chart. And then we're going to say, okay, there were 5 people that sold between this amount, or actually let's make this range a little bit taller. So let's pretend that 20 people had sales in the range of 0 to 99. It was pretty popular because a lot of people did something, but not a lot. Then we might have some kids who sold in this range. Say we had 10 students that sold in this range. So we would make a bar that was 10 high and color it in. And I'm not coloring, I'm just drawing little hash marks. And notice they are touching. And then we're going to tally, okay, how many people sold between 200 and 299. Maybe it's a little less than 10. It's kind of dwindling because not as many people were able to sell this much. This is a lot of candy bars. And then finally the 300 to 399 range. Let's pretend that 5 people sold that much. That is an example of a histogram. You are going to be making your own. So the focus for tomorrow, you're going to draw one just like we did, and then describe with a sentence or two. I'm not going to do that in this video. We'll practice that tomorrow. Here's the key idea. You have to use a frequency table. I know we just kind of talked about it generally. So that tally chart will allow you to see how frequent the data occurs for each range, and it'll make the actual construction of the histogram a lot easier. Here's one to try on your own, asking you to make a frequency table and construct a histogram to represent this data. See you tomorrow.